for the best coverage of the Jazz, Utes, and Cougars is right here on The Zone. This is JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome on in. It's a Friday edition of JJ and Alex, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Alex Curie, Jeremiah Jensen. We had Sam Farnsworth on, and I'm anticipating we're going to keep getting Sam on for the next. I don't know how long are the Olympics even?
Another
JJ?
week.
And the track and field fires up right now, and that's when it's going to get exciting, right?
Yeah.
I think our men and women's mixed relay team set the world record today in just like the preliminary heats. So that's pretty cool. I love that stuff. We dive into Olympic sports that we have no care for the rest of the time. I was watching judo highlights. What do I know about judo? Nothing. Doesn't matter.
We were watching shooting yesterday.
Yeah, there are medals on the line, man.
Boring, man.
It was terrible.
Jeez. Slow motion of a guy tying his shoes. Ooh,
I know.
Captivating.
Oh, he buttoned up the leather jacket.
Oh, wow, the drama.
Mm-hmm. And then, by the way, they're shooting like these 22s, and it's like, you're like, oh, cool. A cap gun. All right.
Although I love that the Turkish guy is now the most famous guy in the world.
The Turkish guy has made the rounds in the memes. I love this dude.
The Turkish assassin.
The Turkish pistol shooter. He's amazing. All right. Joining us on the program right now, he is Riley Nelson, former BYU and Utah State quarterback. And, of course, he joins us on Football Fridays during the football seasons. And we are looking excited, or we're looking forward to this season. Very excited about everything going on. Both teams officially in the Big 12 now, as it's August 2nd. Utah officially entered the conference today. Riley Nelson on the program here with us. What's up, Riles?
Turkish pistol shooter. I don't know. With Cam Rising's like mustache and hair, maybe he. I don't know what his heritage is, but that might be a nickname in the running.
That might be a nice new nickname.
I guarantee you, it's not Turkish.
The Turkish pistol slinger. He does have the pirate thing going on for sure. Riles, what's the offseason been like, man? How have you enjoyed watching everything kind of go on as we run up to camp and all that stuff? Does it bring back the feels?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was I had a meeting down in Provo, and Braden Brown, who was my right tackle when I was down at BYU, is now back as part of the program. Well, there's him, and they got Colby Jorgen. They got a bunch of dudes back. And anyway, texted Braden, and they weren't on field yesterday, but I went over there, and the offense was getting a lift in, and the defense was in meetings and kind of went around. And yeah, I mean, I was in slacks and a button up and carrying a briefcase and an iPad around. But if Kalani would have said, "Hey, we need you," I would have been suited up in 30 seconds. So, yeah, and even just today, it's a Friday in the fall, so I don't really wear logos because you never know. I'm in the customer service business, and you never know where someone's loyalties might lie. But like, I threw on that golf polo with the Y and donned it proudly. It's a Friday in August, man. That means the best time of the year is right around the corner.
It's exciting, and there's so much to talk about. This BYU team's really interesting. There's just so many interesting storylines with this team. Everyone's doubting them. That's always fun. But before we dig into a lot of this, and specifically the quarterback situation, I want to go back to your days and kind of get some insight on what it was like for you. You were in quarterback battles. What is it like to be in a quarterback battle, and what does it take to win the battle?
So it's funny because it's the same thing that both is what it takes to win it, but it's also what can sink you. And that is like, you have to live and die on every rep. Like, not that and of course I went into my senior year as the starter and not necessarily in a position battle, but I still prepared hard. Like, I still won every meeting, but that if something goes wrong, if you're in a quarterback battle, there's only so many reps to go along, and the coaches have to evaluate. And so, let's say your right tackle totally gets beat. It's one of the downfield, third and long things that you really need to see in live action, because you need to see how the pro fits and all that stuff. And your right tackle totally gets beat. You get whistled for a sack as soon as you hit your last drop. Well, when you're going into the season with a guy, you kind of go over to your offensive coordinator and you're like, hey, I need another look at that one. That play got blown dead before I could see how the route totally developed on the back. When you're in a QB competition, it's like whistle, and it's like we already are running more reps than we would have otherwise. Like, you're out, and like that's the end of your drive.
Wow.
Like I was talking about this with a buddy who was asking me today, and it was like, if this happens, no big deal. But like run, so we go into team, live team move it, meaning that we're actually putting a drive together. First down, stuffed, right? So like let's say tackle or no gain. So now you're second 11. Second 11, you throw it into the flat, or you read your front side read. You got a high low. You decide rather than taking the chance on the second long, you're like, let's get some positive down and into third long. You put it on your fullback's chin, and he turns his head upfield a little bit too quickly, drops it. Now you're third and 11, and then the scenario I just described, you get that third and long, that vital third and long play that you need to look at and that the offensive coordinator needs to look at. And as soon as you hit your fifth step in the drop, the coach is blowing the play dead. That's drive. That's over. You basically got nothing productive done. You didn't get to prove what you could do as a quarterback, and not necessarily due to anything of your fault. Just the nature of college football. Like, some runs go for no gain. Some balls get dropped, and sometimes your right tackle gets his butt beat, right? Well, in a quarterback competition, that's like a death knell in that you just had an entire you're maybe going to get 2, maybe 3 drives of that in an entire practice, and you just had 3 plays go by, and you didn't even get to demonstrate any of your skills or abilities that you worked on and developed over the offseason. So it's pretty great. So going back to my original statement, like, you have to live and die on every rep, meaning that every rep has to be the most important rep. But you can't let that weigh too heavily on you, that you're too pressured, that when your right tackle does, stop the bull rush from the outside and you do get to step up into the pocket, you can still deliver that ball, downfield for the first down on third and 11 and keep it going. So it's that thing of being just understanding the pressure, but also embracing the pressure to be able to play instinctively and loose and not let it cause you to be tight and clam up.
Riley, one of the things that, we got this week from camp was everybody immediately kind of goes in and goes, Kalani, what's going on with the quarterback? What's going on with the quarterback? What's going on with the quarterback? He's like, hey, we're not going to actually know any answers this week. And so I was like, stop asking this week at least. And then we heard Gary Bohannon say, yeah, we're splitting all the reps between these 4 quarterbacks evenly. And everyone's like, 4? You're doing all 4. So then throw into the mix the idea that they're having an open kind of competition and throwing not just the 2 quarterbacks whose names we kind of throw out a lot, but then you start to throw in McKay Hillstead and Trayson Bourget. I mean, 4 is insane at that point, right? Or is it that like, nah, the first week you kind of just everybody's getting their feet under them and they're giving reps to everybody?
It has a purpose. The purpose is like, if you're the entire offseason, like the spring was essentially like Retzlaff and Bohannon kind of working his shoulder back or whatever. It was like a 2-man race, and you come back and be like, no, we got other dudes that got playing experience and like we think merit a week of reps. Like, okay, how do your top dogs handle that? Your top dogs who are coming in think it's going to be a 2-horse race, or maybe if you're Retzlaff, you're thinking you're the incumbent, right? You're the leader in the clubhouse, and now all of a sudden you have to split reps evenly. How's that dude handling that mentally? It was funny. Yesterday I was in there. I mentioned they were doing a lift, and I was talking with Braden. I was talking with some of the other strength and conditioning and performance staff because there's still some guys there that were when I was there, but. We Coach Omer was our strength and conditioning coach under Bronco Mendenhall, and he was, like I said, he's since retired, so he was on the tail end of his career, was maybe a little bit more old school, and you can argue the merits of the different strength and conditioning programs or whatever, but there's no doubt in my mind that it was a strategic move from Bronco Mendenhall in working with his strength and conditioning coach and Jay Omer, when we'd show up in the weight room on days and it would be purely a test of our minds. Like, yeah, we understand that this is going to, they never work us to the point of like the workout itself would injure us, but it's like, yeah, this doesn't necessarily translate over to the field, or, this volume of work isn't, conducive to peak performance. But it was like show up and be like, okay, who's going to man up? Like, who's going to embrace the workout? Who's going to give effort, even in the face of knowing that, this doesn't necessarily translate over the field? Who's going to encourage their other teammates to do the same? Who's going to lead and who's going to embrace this adversity, and who's going to shrink from it, or who's going to complain, or who's going to get sour? I think that in a quarterback competition like this, that is an exercise well worth having for two reasons. One, it shows who the quarterback is, but then two, make no mistake about it, the other 100, so there's 4 quarterbacks in the competition. There's 105 in camp. The other 101 guys are watching and seeing exactly what they're doing and how they're responding. And then the coaches will be able to see how the quarterbacks respond, but more importantly, perhaps, how the other 101 guys respond to those quarterbacks when they, come in and command the huddle and take lead of the offense.
Riley, what does BYU need at the quarterback position? As they're evaluating these 4 guys, what does this team need right now from their quarterback?
I'm going to flip this one on you. They need the offensive line to return to the high level of productivity. Yeah, I'm serious.
I know.
You're absolutely right.
It was a trick question, you passed. Good job.
Thanks, guys. No, but they needed to return to the days of, 2020, 2021, when Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall were back there and seemingly having all day and letting the receivers work downfield. They need that. They need, LJ Martin to take that next step forward, maybe a second back in there who can make some plays. They need a deep threat to emerge. Like, literally, you watch the entire season last year and no defense. That's why things were so hard on them. Everyone was playing single high because nobody felt like they needed help on the edge with any of the wide receivers. And, and even with the offensive line struggling, defenses are like, we don't need this. We don't need an extra guy back, playing over the top. So we might as well come down and continue to just bottle up this run game. And so but to me, it all starts with the offensive line, because the offensive line, of course, is double faceted in that the better that they can perform, the more productive they're going to be in the run game. If we all remember, I don't know if you guys do, I certainly do, 6 games through, and BYU's barely averaging 2 yards a carry.
Yeah,
I think it was game 6 when they finally crossed from 1.9 over to 2.2, and then the second aspect was. It was Keaton Slovis, obviously a little bit of a statue back there in the pocket. That dude's taking sacks left and right until he finally gets beat up enough, and they put in a Retzloff kid who comes in, runs around, and sacks goes down. But I don't know the quality of the protection went up that much further. And listen, here's the deal with quarterbacks. Unless you have someone who's truly elite, like a truly rarely generational player, like at the college level, for me, that's like a Cam Newton, right? He was going to be able to overcome deficiencies at any other position groups. At the pro level, probably the closest thing you have to it in today's game is like a Patrick Mahomes, right? No matter who the 5 he's got in front of him or the 5 he's got out in the pattern for him, he's going to be able to kind of make up for it and find a way. But those are like 1 in a million. For all the rest of us, we are largely the product of the other 10 guys lining up around us. And our main responsibility is to be a leader, be a facilitator, and make plays, make good decisions, and make good plays in crunch time, like critical situations, meaning 3rd down, red zone, 4th quarter. And so with that being the case, what does BYU need from the quarterback position? It's the other 10 guys to take an incremental step forward.
Yeah, I mean, Connor Pay talked to us about it at Big 12 Media Day, and then I think he mentioned it this week too. Connor's like the official spokesperson of BYU, the BYU offensive line, like for the last couple of years. And he goes, look, I have no problem telling people that every one of our problems stem from us not doing a good job on the offensive line last year. And I thought, well, you know what? It's whether or not you go, I mean, whether or not it's totally true, Riley, I mean, it's definitely like, well, how are you going to get a good handle on where your offense is if you don't have an offensive line creating those gaps, for the run game and creating some protection for your guys, especially guys that are not totally comfortable back there yet or whatever it might be. So I don't know. I look at it and we kind of know what kind of quarterback that A-Rod likes, and that's somebody who can sling it but also has a little bit of ability to move around. What's that balance like in an offense like A-Rod's where it's like, hey, yeah, make something happen with your feet if you can't do it through the air?
Yeah, the balance is ideally when it worked best under Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall is that you guys run when called upon. We'll design it for you. Outside of that, like, we should be able to create enough pressure through the running back run game, through the traditional run game. Our play action should be a big enough threat to the defense that, when we call on you down on the goal line to pull the keeper because the defensive end is flying down after the running back, like, you do it. Or when, we call a draw on a 3rd and 4, in the middle of the second quarter and catch the defense on their heels, like, you better be good enough to go get the sticks, right? Athletic enough and go get the sticks. But it's you, like you said, you like her to run around, and I was always a little bit frustrated about this with Jaron. Like, I wanted Jaron to go take green grass more. Like, there was too many times I was critical of him even on air when I was making the calls that I felt like, he's trying to stay behind the line of scrimmage for the home run, when at times, especially that I'm losing track of the years. Basically his senior year, right? Like the year that they lost, he had the shoulder injury, and the close one against Notre Dame, the Puka year, and things like that. But there were times where it's like, hey man, we don't need a 35-yard scramble drill. We're 0 for our last 4 third downs. Like, you've got green grass, go take it, and let's get some first downs, and not always looking for the 30-yarder. And then if you look at Zach's production, Zach had a ton of rushing TDs, but he hardly had any yards, and that was just because simply down at the goal line, Algier was such a threat on the goal line out of that shotgun that everyone was selling out to stop him, that he'd pull it. He had 6 or 7 walk-in touchdowns his year off that. So it might be a little bit inflated. In other words, if you look at the rushing touchdowns, because A-Rod does love to use quarterback option down towards the goal line, the touchdowns are a little bit inflated. The yards are really kind of very moderate, and that's how he wants you to use them. He wants you to use them in situations where he's architected for you, and to where I'd say you maybe have a balance between a Jake Retzlaff, who maybe took off a little bit too soon at times, and a Jaron Hall, who maybe spent a little bit too much time, sitting back behind the line of scrimmage waiting for that scramble drill home run. But ultimately it's going to come with whoever suits up in this year. It's going to kind of come with time and instinct. I don't think we can expect them to pick up right where like a Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall left off, because of the volume of reps and the number of games that those guys played. These guys have, and I know they do have some play, but like under Roderick and in the normal flow of a starting, season and schedule, it's going to take them a few games to get under their belt the exact balance between using their arm and using their feet.
The good news for BYU with the quarterback position is all 4 of those guys have taken snaps at the FBS level. So there is experience there, whether it's how much is different with each player. But just what you see right now, the guys are in that room of what they've accomplished, who do you think gives BYU the best chance to win the most games this season out of those 4 guys?
Yeah, JJ, that's such a hard question for me to answer, man, because I didn't appreciate it in a player when like all the conjecture got back to me because like they weren't in the room, they weren't in the room watching the film and doing the install with us. They weren't out on the field, so it's hard for me to say that evaluation. And like, I called the game down in Baylor when Bohannon suited up against Jaron Hall and the Cougs, and they took him down. So like I've seen him playing in person, but geez, guys, was that 2021?
2021 was 3 years ago.
Yeah, right? It feels like a lifetime ago. And, of course, you look at Jake and you're like, okay, he showed some things, but ultimately, he was unable to produce a win in 4 chances. And the reality is, the Oklahoma, pretty big glaring mistake by him. We all make mistakes, and we all have made big mistakes in moments. And the second thing is, like, even as a quarterback, and I know it's a team game, but, like, a 17-point lead in the third quarter, those last 2 games, like, you can only rest on moral victories for so long. But if I'm so I don't know. Here's what I do know. I don't know which one of the players is going to be best able to demonstrate this, but I know Roderick. So quickly, I'll tell you that Greg and Roderick was gracious enough in the summers to allow Greg and I to go in there and kind of have we'd have a little film. We spent a couple hours with him. He'd talk about offensive philosophy, a little bit of personnel. We have a little film session, not so much to air any trade secrets over the air, but more so to give us some background context so that we can call, have a more intelligent call, kind of knowing a little bit more of what he was trying to accomplish through his offensive design and play calling. And we had 3 or 4 of these meetings, and he'd always kind of set up with, like, here are offensive priorities. And there'd always only be about 3 of them. And 2 and 3 would kind of switch around. We got to be good in critical downs, or establishing the run is our first and foremost. Physical attitude of play or whatever. But one thing that never changed was protect the football. The possession is sacred. Like that is first and foremost above all else. So the guy that's going to start the season for the Cougars is going to be the guy that Aaron Roderick and his staff believe will take care of the football in the most responsible way. And now Roderick has been able to strike a balance between finding guys that can take care of the football and also still make plays, not get so tight and so preoccupied with taking care of the football that they miss opportunities when they're presented to him. But it's going to be whoever he trusts, because they write it up. It's on the whiteboard in the offensive meeting room. Possession of the football is sacred. And so that starts with the quarterback. And so I don't know who's been able to demonstrate that the most, but I can tell you whoever ultimately wins it, that will probably be their chief trait that they demonstrated in this fall camp and throughout this quarterback competition.
Riley, real quick before we get you out here, man, this is going to be a fun season because Utah and BYU back in the same conference. You've had a mix of people acting like that's not that big of a deal, the game's not that big of a deal, and, or no, this is the most important thing that's ever happened. Where does it really lie? Because, I don't know, JJ and I both covered this team during the a stretch between, the Bronco era, the Croton era, the and then now into the Kalani era. And, we get mixed bag of like, oh, no, this is we prepare for every team the same exact way. And it's like, this is different. How cool is it, or how much does it not matter that these teams are both in the same conference together now?
It's huge. It means everything. I mean, from BYU's standpoint, now they're on a level playing field as far as recruiting goes. Now they are still playing catch up as it relates to like program development and roster depth and things like that. It cannot be understated. I mean, as much as we want to downplay it, as much as we had close games. Like my senior year, we missed a field goal. We missed 3 field goals actually that would have won the game. Right, Taysom going for 2 and getting stuffed, and Jaron Hall was finally able to break degrees. But bottom line is, there's no hiding from the fact that we lost 9 straight games to Utah, and there's also no hiding the fact that despite the majority of those being very competitive, Zach Wilson up 20 points at the beginning of the fourth quarter, right, in whatever year that was, 2019 or whenever, like. There's no denying that like there was an obvious like depth. Probably the top guys with the top guys were there, but as you got down the roster, it got apparent that it dropped off a lot more quickly for BYU than it does Utah. So to be back on equal recruiting footing, and then just the game itself will be so much more fun. First of all, because it doesn't have to happen in the first week or 2 of the season. You're going to be able to see these teams actually see what kind of identity they are, how good are they really. Second thing is, it's always fun when you're in a conference to compare across common opponents. That's going to add to the rivalry. Did you see what they did against Iowa State? Well, yeah, BYU did this, and be able to do all that. And not to mention, it just helps both teams be a little bit better prepared. When you're in a rivalry, you want as much like – when we were, in that, and the only film that you had on Utah was, a game against a 1AA opponent, you didn't learn that much, and so you're going in kind of hoping for the best. Versus now that it's a conference matchup and it's happening a little bit later in the season, it's just going to add so much more to it. It's the quality of the game and football itself, I think, will be noticeably increased, and then all of the fan elements around it. I think it only serves for more. Fun if people will let it. As long as they don't let the fun, turn into some of the nasty stuff that we've done. But I think for the most part, in today's day and age, the nasty stuff gets out there on social media and it gets parroted, and so you have a disproportionate perception of how bad it really is. I think the reality is, this is bringing, for the average fan that doesn't live on social media, this is bringing more excitement, more meaning, and is a net huge positive for football in the state of Utah.
He's the Turkish pistol slinger. He's Riley Nelson. Riles, we're looking forward to another eventful football season, man. Are you down to still hang out with us on Fridays? Because I'll tell you what we're going to do. There's going to be a lot of high school games. I think we're hanging out all season with JJ and Sly doing all those high school games. We might just be kind of tagging along doing the show with them.
Oh, man, I would love that. You know me, like, I always tell everybody that forget being an Aggie or a Cougar or whatever. Like, I dreamed growing up of being a Logan High Grizzly, and so prep football has a special place in my heart. So most definitely count me in, man.
All right, we're down. All right, Roz, we'll talk to you in a few weeks, man. Good to talk to you.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Riley.
Bye-bye.
Riley Nelson, everybody.
Who better to ask about a quarterback competition at BYU? He knows the ins and outs. He's experienced it all, and he gave us great insight.
Listen, he's been part of the awkward ones too.
Everything. He's seen it all.
Yeah, and
this is one of those that'll stand out. This is one we're going to remember.
But I'll tell you, too.
It's a pretty important battle. And to have 4 guys in it?
Yeah, but see, I think that he sort of assuaged a little bit of the fear on that, the 4-person battle thing. I think that goes away pretty quick after the first meeting.
It has to. Yeah, you got to whittle that down.
Well, no, he goes, no, there's a purpose for that.
Yeah.
It's you get guys out there and you just immediately put the pressure on. And you immediately get guys looking at them. You immediately get everybody with rack focus on this thing. You know what I mean? And so instead of just being like, we don't know what we're doing, I guess we'll just have all 4 go out there. Because that's not the storyline either. The reality is there's a reason for those 4. It gets pared down pretty quickly. And we're not in that quarterback room. We don't know the reality of who actually has the stuff right now, man.
And he made that point too, and it's an absolutely fair. We have our opinions based on what we've seen, but so much goes on in those practices we can't watch. So much goes on in the meeting. So much goes on amongst players talking about stuff or whatever is going on that we don't know about. How does a player carry himself when the cameras aren't on? We don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into this. But either way, whatever happens, this is a big decision that BYU is going to have to make because this team feels like, especially offensively, they need to be a lot better. And there's pressure. I think there's pressure in that building to be a lot better offensively. And if that offensive line hasn't shored some things up, if the run game can't get going for more than 90 yards a game,
right.
If that quarterback turns the ball over like crazy like they did last year, then it's gonna get pretty tense.
It'll be weird times. Weird times down in Provo, man. All right. Appreciate Riley taking some time on a Friday.
It was great.
We'll take the break here. We'll come back. Guess what we have around the corner here, JJ? I know it's a shocker. Fridays, and even this time of day, NFL Blitz. We've got stuff to talk about.
Strike up the Sam Spence.
You know what I did? I dove into a conversation about football with Rusty Keys in the hallway.
He got you again.
You know why? Because as the resident Chiefs fanatic in the building, he's feeling pretty good about some of the news.
Keys, I'd love to tell you about my Chiefs.
Listen, you guys had your moment, all right? You guys got your John Elway championships out of the way. Got your Peyton Manning freebie.
JJ, we got a chance to be the first team to do 3 straight.
With a big old smile on his face as he walks by, and then he's slow motion cackle.
Did the Broncos ever win 3 straight?
Oh, boy.
No, Rusty, they did not. They came up short.
Did they ever lose 4 in a row? Or at least 4, the first 4 that they were ever in? Now, look, losing 4 in a row is only something that the Bills can hang their hat on.
They lost 3 in 4 years. Is that what you just wanted me to say that?
That's pretty bad, too.
The 80s were tough on the playground.
Wearing that bright orange.
It's crazy. Like I totally get how Buffalo Bills fans feel because your team gets there, and that's an amazing accomplishment. But nobody makes fun of the 8-8 team. But they sure love to make fun of the team that lost the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
And when you do it 3 and 4 years at a young age, ugh.
Yeah, but what about the drive?
Not a Super Bowl.
All right. We will take a break, and we'll come back. When we do, NFL Blitz is next. Stay with us, 97.5 EKSL Sports Zone.